could you briefly tell us a little bit more about your work and how, in your opinion, your initiatives work particularly towards the Sustainable Development Goals mentioned?
Okay, thanks, Agatha. So I'm going to tell you a bit about Lake Aid, which is a grassroots charity. That means that we work in our local community and we're completely volunteer run, so we're all volunteers. So we have a board of 8 volunteers, we have about 40 active volunteers who help out on our project, and we have a Facebook group of about 700 supporters. And our aim with Lake Aid is to help asylum-seeking children and unaccompanied minors who are in Annecy. Unaccompanied minors are teenagers, often from Africa, who arrive in Annecy without any family with them. And our goal is to try and make them welcome, to make them feel welcome, and to try and help them to integrate into our local community. And so we do that in several ways, which kind of fit into the Sustainable Development Goals. So the first is to do with education. So we help them by providing school supplies to children who just turn up and they're thrown into French school, but they don't even have a backpack or a pencil case. And our volunteers also go into the shelters and do tutoring, so often with French, because the children we help, their parents don't speak French, and so they help with their French and often their maths, the key subjects. So that's education. The second SDG that we work towards, I suppose, is reducing inequality. When we started working with the children, we noticed that they often didn't get out much. They live in shelters and temporary accommodation. They don't do many outings or fun things. And Annecy, if anyone knows it, is actually very beautiful, and there's a lake and there's mountains. And so with Lake Aid, we organize activities and we take the children out to enjoy nature and the outdoors and just fun activities that kids in their class, for example, are doing, and they're not. And then the third SDG that we work towards, I suppose, is partnerships. Lake Aid, we can't do anything without our charity partners, and we have about 10 different charity partners that we work with on every single project, and we're constantly on the phone to them or emailing them, exchanging messages about how we can work together and help the children. So yeah, that's Lake Aid in a nutshell.
How has the focus of Lake Aid's work shifted over the years, and what factors do you think influenced this change?
Well, Lake Aid started 5 years ago with a message on Facebook from someone I vaguely knew, and she was horrified by the refugee crisis that was unfolding in Europe at that time. And she said, look, can't we get together some warm clothes and send them to a refugee camp in Austria? And so a group of us got together on Facebook and we sent 2 van loads of clothes off to Austria. And then afterwards, a few of us were just sitting in my kitchen and we were saying, well, what now? You know, that was good, but, you know, we need to do something else now. And why don't we do something a bit closer to home? Because Austria is very far away. There are perhaps needs, you know, in our local community. So we did some internet research and we contacted some local charities, and we found that there were actually shelters for asylum-seeking families in Annecy, in our own town, that we didn't know about. So we knocked on some doors and we eventually found a charity running a shelter that was happy for us to come in twice a week, our volunteers, and help the children with their homework. And so that's how Lake Aid started, just going in and helping with the homework. And it was through helping with the homework that we got to know the mums and the dads and the families, and we got to understand their needs in a bit more detail. And it wasn't just help with homework that they needed. They needed clothes, they needed nappies, the girls needed sanitary towels, the teenage kids needed work placements, the women needed to find paid and legal employment. And so little by little, Lake Aid's sort of frame of reference grew and grew, and now we don't just do homework, we do all of those other things as well.
That's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that, how kind of by starting in some way small, then change can kind of ripple out and so many other things can come from that. So kind of related to that question, I also wanted to ask if you've maybe seen any changes in terms of demographics or, for example, the number of asylum seeking children over the past 5 years at Lakehead, and how do you think an issue like climate change will impact migration and organizations like yours?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have any stats for you. Asylum seekers are a bit of a political hot potato in Annecy, and I would say across all of France. So it's not really something that the local press or media or anyone really communicates about, the number of people being helped or where they're from. But certainly we have seen within Lakehead that there are more and more families and children arriving. At the beginning, we worked mainly with families from Eastern Europe. So the shelter would be full mainly of Kosovans, Albanians and Bosnians. But now we're finding a much bigger range of countries. So for example, next week, we're organizing activities for children, and we have Venezuelans, Ukrainians, Armenians, and then all the young unaccompanied minors from Africa, from Guinea, from Democratic Republic of Congo, from Mali. As to why they're in Annecy, I don't know, because they're just kids and we don't really ask them why they're there, and it's not something they particularly want to talk about anyway on the whole. But from what I've gathered, a lot of them are fleeing difficult political situations in their own countries, or they have a disability, or someone in their family has a disability that is not catered for in their own country, so their parents have brought them to France to try and get help. And then I would say the unaccompanied minors who come from Africa, they seem to be fleeing, a lot of them are orphans, they seem to be fleeing war and poverty. Whether the war and the poverty are indirect or direct results of climate change, I couldn't tell you. I'm sure Shanta would probably have a much more considered view on that than I do. But yes, I would say it's a growing problem, and it's only going to amplify as the years go on.
Thank you so much, Felicity, for that. I will admit, kind of listening to some of the things, it's very chilling when you look at all the problems kind of that we have. So it's amazing to see charities like yours and more people getting involved in helping in these areas. How do you think that young individuals like me, for example, can best educate or gear ourselves towards addressing these sustainable development goals? And the second part, how can older generations, especially those who maybe think that too far down their career or they've already got other interests and they can't really transition anymore, how can they really shift their perspective and also start fostering change? Join
a grassroots charity or any kind of charity, any kind of local organization, and just get stuck in. I think you learn a huge amount about the sustainable development goals just from getting involved. And I think also at the moment, it's really easy to feel very overwhelmed by the climate crisis, and you know, the news is so bad, and Facebook and Twitter and everything, and it's easy just to think, I can't do anything, it's all so dreadful. Well, to get out of that paralysis, just get involved in a local charity, and you'll see that there really is a lot you can do on a very practical level and have immediate impacts on people's lives. Which is not to say the bigger picture isn't important, because it really is. But you can also, just for your own anxiety and peace of mind and mental health, I think just getting out there and doing something practical is something that everyone can do. And I would say, you know, from young to old, there's no age limit. A little shout out to my parents, who I think are watching this. My dad's 82. My mum's in her late 70s, and they're both, you know, incredibly involved in their local communities. And my daughter Stella, who's 8, she comes and helps at Lakehead events. So, you know, there's no age limit. It's everyone can help and do something and feel better and make an impact. So would you want to maybe share a little bit more about one specific story, or maybe something you haven't mentioned yet about
yes, a time when kind of you could really see how your work impacted someone or something like that?
Yeah, I'm happy to share a story. I was recently contacted on Facebook out of the blue by a girl in her early 20s, and her message just said, "Hi Felicity, I've been trying to find you. Lake Aid and you helped me and my family when we arrived in France, and we're so grateful for you. You changed everything. So I'm so pleased I found you. Thank you so much." And it was lovely. We lose track of people, they move on, you know. It was so nice that she'd been looking and she found me. But what was also nice was that because we got back in contact, we were able to continue helping her. And she told me, when I met her, she was about 16. She'd just arrived in France. She'd been thrown into a French school. She didn't speak French. She was miserable. She was missing her friends back in her home country. She was having difficulties with her parents and had an unsuitable boyfriend, you know, you name it. But when she got back in touch, she said, I want to start my own business as a cleaning business. And I was so pleased that Lake Aid was then able to put her in touch with one of our volunteers who runs a cleaning business, who is now mentoring her and helping her with all her paperwork and the administrative paraphernalia of setting up a business in France. So for me, that was just a great story of seeing someone 5 years on and that they were integrating into their new life, which is really what Lake Aid tries to help them do through education and activities and welcoming them when they arrive.